CIA on May the 11th, 1967, and proposed to meet with them under their terms and to make the CIA's version of Garrison, quote, a part of the background in the forthcoming NBC show, unquote. Later on, Sheridan's intermediary, a man named Herbert Miller, actually became a courier for Clay Shaw's attorneys to drop off defense documents at the CIA. And clearly, Sheridan's special was never meant to be even modestly objective. We now have 2 FBI memoranda which reveal that people in New Orleans who knew about the show in advance realized it was meant to be a hatchet job. One of these memos say that those involved had received instructions from NBC in New York to actually shoot Garrison down. So today, no one can say that there was not interference by Washington with Garrison's inquiry. Why did this happen? In an early 1967 memo, the New Orleans office of the CIA discussed Garrison's probe, and they concluded with the following quote, "We believe that there is some truth in the allegations of the Garrison investigation, and that the matter is under a discreet and sensitive investigation by the FBI." All of this new information about the Garrison investigation can be called either through these new documents or through a remarkable new book on the Garrison investigation by William Davey, called Let Justice Be Done. One of the first things that the review board did was to declassify the previously closed sessions of the Warren Commission Executive Committee. This included the 7 Warren Commissioners plus Chief Counsel J. Lee Rankin.
You are not a communist, but you are a Marxist-Leninist. What is the difference?
And here's another one for you. What would you say if I told you Lee Oswald was trained in the Russian language when he was a Marine?
I say he's probably getting intelligence training.
Well, you were in the Marines. Who'd be running that training?
Office of Naval Intelligence?
There had always been questions about who Lee Harvey Oswald really was. As Senator Richard Schweiker stated, he had the fingerprints of intelligence work all over him. Here was a man who was supposed to be a communist, yet had no communist friends, and in fact, he was closely associated with 2 of the most reactionary groups in America, the anti-Castro Cubans in New Orleans and the White Russian group in Dallas. There was a report that Oswald had received language training at a school called the Monterey School in California, and he had learned Spanish and Russian. It now turns out that on page 192 of the January 27 transcript, Rankin mentions this very subject, and he says we are trying to find out what he studied at the Monterey School. Note that it does not say that there's a question if or not he attended the school, but the question is what he studied there. Evidently, the commission knew that he was there, and that school is not in the index to the Warren Report. One reason the commission may have been mincing about Oswald was that they were clearly getting only bits and pieces of the whole story. This is reflected in a 1964 CIA memo on Oswald. Birch O'Neill, an assistant to counterintelligence chief James Angleton, said that the counterintelligence staff at CIA had the job of determining which pieces of information should be made available to the commission. In other words, the CIA seems to be vetting the information going to the Warren Commission first.
They're gonna kill Kennedy.
Through the credit sequence of Oliver Stone's JFK, we get, in segments, the story of a woman who's thrown out of a car, abandoned, ends up in a hospital, and warns the people in attendance that President Kennedy is about to be killed in Dallas. She says that these are serious men and somebody has to do something. What not very many viewers realize is that this story was absolutely true, and it was investigated by Jim Garrison, the House Select Committee on Assassinations, and now the Review Board has released more documents on this remarkable story of this woman who 3 days in advance predicted that President Kennedy would be killed in Dallas. On November the 20th, 1963, Louise Guillory, a hospital director at Moussa General Hospital, called State Trooper Francis Fruget, who worked in narcotics detail. She told him that they had a patient at the hospital who was under the influence. Fruget went over and found a woman named Rose Cherami in the waiting room outside the emergency ward. Moussa was a private hospital, so Fruget had to arrange to have her transferred and also to receive a sedative. On the way to the state hospital at Jackson, Louisiana, Rose Cherami began to relate her remarkable story. She was en route from Florida to Dallas as part of a drug deal with 2 other men who were Cubans. Rose Cherami was to function as a courier of funds for heroin, which was to be dropped off to her by a seaman coming into the port of Galveston. From there, the 3 were to proceed to Mexico. At a seedy bar en route, called the Silver Slipper Lounge. An argument ensued, and Rose was roughly abandoned by her friends, who threw her out. Then, while hitching a ride, she was hit by a car driven by a man named Frank Odom. Odom had delivered her to Musa Hospital, where she was picked up by Frugier. While on the way to Jackson, Rose told Frugier that in Dallas, the men had planned to kill Kennedy. According to several witnesses at the hospital, on November the 22nd, Rose again predicted the assassination before it happened. She also told the doctor there that she knew that both Ruby and Oswald had known each other, and she had seen them together at Ruby's club. Frugier later also confirmed that she had worked for Jack Ruby. Another employee at the hospital, an intern named Wayne Owen, told his local newspaper in Wisconsin that he and other interns were told of the plot in advance of the assassination. He said that they even heard that one of the men involved was Jack Rubenstein, which was Jack Ruby's real name. Rose also told of that association with Ruby to Dr. Victor Weiss at Jackson Hospital. After the assassination, Frugier told the House Select Committee that he demanded to see Rose Cherami again to interview her. She told him that her two companions actually seemed to be part of the conspiracy rather than just aware of it. Frugier then had her story about the drug deal checked out by both local and federal authorities. Frugier then had his superior, Colonel Morgan, call up Captain Will Fritz of the Dallas Police to offer Rose as a witness to his investigation. Morgan told Frugier after the call that Fritz was not interested. So, a potentially explosive witness was now turned away in 1963. In 1967, Jim Garrison received several leads about Rose Cherami from people related to the Jackson Hospital, which is about 3 hours north of New Orleans. This included a friend of Dr. Victor Weiss, a man named A.H. Magruder. Garrison tracked down Frugier, deputized him, and then asked him to find Cherami. Frugier found out that she had died in a car accident in 1965. Frugier told the House Select Committee in the next decade that he then found the Silver Slipper Lounge, where Rose had become separated from her two friends in 1963. He found the bartender in attendance the night Rose had walked in. The man's name was Mac Manuel. Frugier displayed the manual several photos of suspects from the Garrison investigation. Manuel